Game one of the NBA Finals is here. We're recording this on Thursday, June 2nd. Tip-off is approximately 6 p.m. Pacific time. Connor Letourneau, he's been covering the Golden State Warriors for over 5 years, pretty much 6 years now. He's got your insights. He's got your knowledge. We're going to break this series and especially game one down. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection and reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON. That is Con_Cron, representing his position at the San Francisco Chronicle. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Connor, you've been publishing some tremendous content for the San Francisco Chronicle lately. You did a mailbag segment this morning, which is intriguing to me because it really dives into what the fans are thinking. What were some interesting questions on today's mailbag that you answered that you could share for the Locked On audience?
I got a bunch of good ones. A couple of the ones that stood out. And I know this is a topic that you kind of got into on the podcast, I believe, yesterday, but one of the readers asked me, why are experts picking the Warriors, picking the Celtics, not just picking the Celtics, but picking the Celtics by a wide margin. I brought up one of the questions dealt with specifically the 538 and ESPN BPI projections, both of which gave the Celtics at least an 80% chance of winning this series. And as I wrote in my mailbag, I think that analytics definitely favor defense, and no one's going to deny the fact that when fully healthy, the Celtics are a superior defensive team than the Warriors. But I think that when you're making a prediction, the eye test matters, and other factors that go beyond maybe X's and O's or analytics matter. And when it comes to the Warriors, they have the championship pedigree. They have, I think, some situational things to their advantage. They have superior depth. I doubt that the analytics took into account the fact that Marcus Smart and Robert Williams III are not at their best right now, that they're dealing with injuries. And that matters a lot when you're talking about the Celtics defense. And so for all those reasons, I'm picking the Warriors to win. In my series preview, I did like a big 1,500 word series preview a few days ago. I picked the Warriors to win in 7 games. The more time I've had to think about it, more time I've had to study the matchup, I really think it's going to be more like 6. I think that there's a better chance of the Warriors winning this series in 5 games than of them losing. And that basically goes to the fact that I think that the Warriors are going to get back Gary Payton II, and that's going to help a lot defensively. I don't think the Celtics have the firepower to beat the Warriors in a best of 7 series. I know we talk a lot about the Celtics defense, and for good reason. It's a great defense. It's probably the best in recent NBA history when fully healthy. And Marcus Smart and Robert Williams III have not been themselves for a while now, especially Robert Williams III, who hasn't been the same player since he tore his meniscus 2 months ago. Not having him as that enforcer inside is really going to hurt the Celtics. And you saw how the Warriors did going against a Dallas team that didn't have much of an interior presence. They just feasted inside and then got plenty of openings for their shooters. So I think the Warriors are going to win this. It could go 7. I'm picking 6.
Yeah, it's really hard to predict. This is by far, for me at least, the hardest in terms of predicting the number of games, just because I have to give the Celtics respect. But I'm picking them in 5 if the Warriors are healthy, especially if Igoudala, Gary Payton II, and Otto Porter Jr. are playing. I do, just because it's only because of the home court advantage. Like, as good as the Celtics have been on the road this postseason, the Warriors have been just as good at home, if not better. I just, it's going to be a battle of wills, but I think the Warriors will overcome that ultimately. When you talk about the Celtics defense being just outstanding, and rightfully so, I'm not going to disagree against that, but the Warriors actually had a better defense in the regular season before Draymond Green got injured.
Mhm.
In your opinion, I know the Celtics had a better second half of the season. I don't know if you've had a chance to really compare the analytics between the two, but where does the Warriors defense rank compared to the Celtics when you take into account what the Warriors are doing the first half of the year? Like, is the
I
Celtics defense better?
The Celtics defense is better, 100%. And I understand what you're
100%.
saying about the Warriors defense, but you have to understand the Celtics didn't become the Celtics until really midway through the regular season. And the Warriors have not been the same defensive team since Draymond had that injury in January. Even when Draymond came back, even since Draymond has come back, they haven't proven that they can be nearly as consistent on that side of the ball. They've been up and down in the playoffs. They've definitely had their moments where you see what they can be, but they haven't been nearly as reliable defensively as the Celtics are, which is why I would definitely give the Celtics the nod in that department. I heard your podcast yesterday with the Celtics beat writer, and he was basically making the point of, look, yeah, the Warriors are not as good defensively. The Warriors are good defensively, but not necessarily great. But they're great offensively. And the Celtics are good, but not necessarily great offensively, but they're great defensively. So it's kind of an interesting matchup in that respect.
So what? So Draymond is 100% now. He's been 100% for a little while. So I'm curious to know what you're basing. I mean, I know the Warriors, I think in the postseason are sixth overall in a defensive rating. But a lot of that I think is skewed based on the fact that the Mavericks were one of the most potent offenses they faced. I mean, that was just a 3-point shooting team that just lives and dies by the three, and you're going to see a lot of points there no matter what. I know the Grizzlies had a few big games. I don't think the Celtics faced any offenses that are comparable. Are you basing the Warriors like diminished defense from what they were the first half of the season based on those two series, or are you see something I'm missing?
I mean, like you just said, they're the sixth best defense in the playoffs. And that's good, but it's not what it used to be. They're not they're just not as consistent in their actions. They've botched a decent amount of rotations in these playoffs. I think that a lot of it is just getting comfortable with the new pieces, because this is the first time that they've been at least close to fully healthy, and even then
Yeah.
they've had guys in and out of the rotation with Otto Porter and Gary Payton II. And so I think that has caused some problems for the Warriors defensively. I do think that if they can get GP2, Otto Porter, and Andre Iguodala back for these finals, they can finally show fully what they can be defensively, because those are all good defenders. I mean, Gary Payton II is an elite defender. He
Mhm.
is an all defensive caliber defender. And Andre Iguodala is definitely got some mileage on those tires, but he is an incredibly savvy defensive player who knows where to be and can call out reads and all those great things. And then same thing with Otto Porter. He's not the physical specimen, or he was never fully a physical specimen, but he's not as physically gifted as he necessarily was before the injuries. But he's also very smart and is a helpful defensive player. And so one of the reasons why I like the Warriors in this series is they have a lot more depth, and
Yeah.
Steve Kerr has a lot more options rotationally and with his lineups than Ime Udoka has. The Celtics are only playing seven and a half guys in this rotation. Peyton Pritchard maybe gets spot minutes here or there, but
Mhm.
generally speaking, it's about 7 guys. The Warriors have proven that they can play 10 plus guys and feel comfortable in these playoffs.
Mhm.
Even guys like Moses Moody and Kuminga can eat up minutes when necessary. The Celtics don't have that depth, and that hurts them both, I think, offensively and defensively. The Warriors, if it's not working defensively, they can switch things up and maybe throw out an Andre Iguodala on a Jaylen Brown, or do something different. Whereas Udoka is not going to have that luxury.
No, you're absolutely right. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the latest injury statuses on those players, because you're as insider as they get. You're covering this team every day at Chase Center and traveling with the team. I mean, I am very curious as to see what Gary Payton II produces. I'm very curious to see, how Andre Iguodala performs, because he did look good in that Nuggets series when he played. And there's, of course, Otto Porter Jr. But first, I need to tell people how to save money, because in these times with inflation, gas prices are psychotic. Don't get me started on that. If you're driving a vehicle, you got to save money. And that's where Rock Auto comes into play. They save you a ton of money. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? An example being a Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from a chain store, just $216 from Rock Auto. They're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low. And again, you could avoid someone like me contaminating you by going to the store and just do it from home. Just go to their website, use your phone. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their "How did you hear about us" box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We have an important favor to ask you. We put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcasts. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards to take our audience survey. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thanks for your help. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, covering the Golden State Warriors as an NBA sports enterprise reporter. I don't even know. What's your new title? Maybe correct me on that.
We're still kind of ironing out what the title is, but yeah, something like that. Senior NBA and sports enterprise writer. Basically meaning that I write a lot about the Warriors, but I also will do big stuff on everything else in the Bay Area.
I love it
as well.
The senior title is extra special because it shows your experience. You know what you're doing. They trust you. You did the mailbag segment this morning. A couple of people emailed me with some additional questions. Optimist Chung writes, "I'm nervous because in that last game when we played the Celtics, they destroyed us even before Curry got hurt. Seemed like their team defense is capable of stopping our offense. What's different between then and now?" Connor, I could happily answer this as well, but you start it off, please.
I don't put a lot of stock in any regular season matchup. I mean, I've had a lot of readers and fans reach out to me and talk about regular season games. And once you mention the words regular season, I stop caring because it's a different thing. Okay. It's literally a different type of basketball. It's hard to compare apples and oranges. And also, in both of those regular season meetings with the Celtics, both teams were missing players. And so, there's just a lot of different reasons why I don't put a lot of stock in that. But yeah, I think that both of these teams, part of the reason, and I keep saying reasons why I think the Warriors are going to win, but another reason why I think the Warriors are going to win is that the Warriors are truly peaking at the right time.
Agreed.
I'm not sure if this is what the Celtics peaking. I feel like the Celtics peaked toward the end of the regular season. They have not been as good in these playoffs as they were toward the end of the regular season. And when you're talking about the finals, you really need to be at your best. Yeah. And I think the Warriors are the best versions of themselves right now.
And just to add to that, in that second meeting especially, the first one was so early in the season. The Celtics made some changes that turned things around. They traded away Dennis Schroeder, who is not a good fit, clearly. They traded away Josh Richardson, who provides virtually no offense, and his defense, as good as it is, was not good enough for the Celtics defense. But in that second meeting, Stephen Curry played 14 minutes before he was taken out by Marcus Smart. That was only Draymond Green's second game back from missing 2+ months because of that injury. I mean, in case you folks have forgotten, it took Draymond a couple weeks to regain his footing. He was playing awful He didn't even start that game, just to put it in perspective. Also, Andrew Wiggins and Gary Payton II did not play in that game. So I hope that gives you folks some reassurance that there shouldn't be much meaning extracted from that second regular season matchup. And then Edward Ruiz, childish underscore Ed Bino on Twitter writes, with Gary Payton II back in time for the finals, do you both think there's a chance we see him close games regularly? Will that closing lineup likely be different each game? Connor, your thoughts on the closing lineup in the NBA finals?
It's very possible. It's very possible. Andrew Wiggins will probably see the bulk of the time on Jason Tatum, but really Wiggins and Gary Payton II can kind of toggle between Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think they're somewhat interchangeable. They're different players, they're different defenders, but in terms of what the Warriors need out of them on that side of the ball, I think they're kind of interchangeable. And so Gary Payton II is going to be incredibly important in this series. The fact that it looks like he's going to be ready for game one tonight is kind of incredible. We're only a couple of weeks removed from him fracturing his elbow. I can't help but be a little bit skeptical. I can't help but wonder, are they rushing him back a little bit? Like, is he going to be fully right? But it's better for it to be an arm issue as opposed to like a leg issue or a foot issue. And maybe it affects his offense, but he's on the floor for his defense. So, and because he's a good defender, he doesn't defend with his arms or his hands. He defends with his feet. So, I think him being back is going to be huge, and I could definitely see him being in that closing lineup. Who knows? Maybe he's even starting at some point in this series. I think that Steve Kerr is going to be flexible and fluid in terms of what he does throughout this series. It's going to be a lot matchup driven, which is, like I said earlier, a big reason why I think the Warriors have an advantage here. Steve has so many assets at his disposal. Ime Udoka is limited. He's got a good 7 or 8 guys, but that's pretty much it. And depth matters. Options matter.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. What is your feeling on Gary Payton II and Andre Iguodala? They've been participating in practice. I have either played in scrimmages yet?
They have, yes.
Oh, that's very encouraging.
Which is the big hurdle that you need to clear from coming back when you're coming back from any injury. And so I expect all 3 of those guys to be available at some point in these finals. I expect Gary Payton II back tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if Otto Porter was back tonight too. I would probably expect them to keep out Andre just a little bit longer, just to be careful, because he's older and has been dealing with so much physically. I'm not honestly 100% sure Andre will play a huge role in these finals regardless, just because he hasn't been available, and other guys have stepped up, and I think Steve might be a little bit more comfortable with guys who have more recent experience. Obviously Andre has a ton of playoff experience, but just the fact that he hasn't been out there in a while and hasn't played with all these guys is to his detriment. So, I do think that the fact that I don't want to say rushing GP2 back, but the fact that they're trying to get him back this soon speaks to how much they value him and how,
of course,
and how much they know, how much they believe that he's going to be a huge factor in this series. Because the thing about the Celtics is they really only have 2 high level scorers. They have Jason Tatum, who is proving he's a legitimate superstar in this league. I'm not ready to say he's, a transcendent player in this league. He's not at like a Luka level or even necessarily a Ja level, in my opinion, but he is a high level, I would call him a superstar at this point in the league.
Yeah, I would too.
And Jaylen Brown is like a notch or 2 below that, where he's an all-star caliber guy and a high-level elite 2-way player in this league. Not necessarily a superstar, but maybe a star. He's like star, not quite superstar. But then outside of that, who's their best offensive player?
Yeah, it's either going to be, I'm guessing their 3-4 options are either going to be Smart or Al Horford, a combination of those 2.
And Marcus Smart is as much of a liability offensively as he is helpful offensively.
That's true. That's a great
Marcus
point.
Smart takes a lot of bad shots. He's a little bit overconfident. He hurts them a lot offensively. He's an elite defensive player, obviously defensive player of the year for good reason. But if he's your number 3 option, that's just not great. And the Warriors have, 4 guys who are legit can be go-to options,
Yeah.
and Steph, Clay, on Andrew Wiggins, and Jordan Poole. And I think the emergence of Jordan Poole this season, when we look back, if the Warriors do win the title, when we look back at this season, I think we're all going to point to the emergence of Jordan Poole as a huge reason. If Jordan Poole wasn't what he is right now, the Warriors would not be here. And
Agreed.
No one in the world expected Jordan Poole to be this type of player this soon. So he deserves
except Wes Goldberg, right? Isn't Wes the one guy that was saying from the beginning?
I will give Wes
one thing.
Wes was not saying that he was going to be a star player, but Wes was saying that Jordan was a very good playmaker. He was the first person I heard say that Jordan was a really good playmaker and could pass.
True.
Because if you remember coming out of Michigan, he was just a catch and shoot guy. He played for John Beilein, who I think is an enormously overrated coach, who totally misused him at Michigan. And if Beilein had used him properly, he would have probably been a lottery pick, not a late first rounder.
Yeah, and then he has a very brief stint in the NBA. That is funny.
One of the worst coaching stints in NBA history. Like fire.
It was comical, his brief stint. It really was, man. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for all your betting stats and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup. And I'm looking at the odds right now, Connor. The Warriors are favored. The line has not changed for tonight's game. It's -3.5. The money line -168 for the Warriors, +148 for the Celtics. The over/under 213.5. Does anything stick out to you there?
No, not really. I'm not a betting man, so I know I don't feel comfortable with any of this stuff. I think if you talk to any beat writer, he'll tell you that he's not comfortable with this topic. I mean, we're not allowed to bet. So
right, exactly. Yeah, and it's taken over, man. I mean, it's getting legalized left and right, and people love to bet, but I hear you at the same time. I totally understand. Well, regardless, if you do decide you want to bet, BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Make sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, the big boards. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So is Connor Letourneau on Twitter, and for a very low price, he's also available from the San Francisco Chronicle. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at @CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. We're here. It's crazy, though. The Golden State Warriors, for the 6th time in 8 years, are in the NBA Finals. It's a staggering run. Is there anything that, I feel like most bases have been covered. My thing is, and let me know if you agree or disagree with this. The Celtics are averaging in the postseason this stout defense that everyone's raving about, and maybe rightfully so. I'm certainly not disrespecting it or diminishing it. They're giving up 101 points per game in the postseason, if my numbers are correct. My theory is they haven't faced anything offensively like the Warriors. You've touched on this earlier in the show. So my guess is that 101 number, add 10 to that, because that's realistically what the Warriors could and should put up on the Celtics. Do you agree with that? And any final thoughts as we wrap things up and dive into the NBA Finals? We're here.
Yeah, it feels like we're at that point where we've kind of exhausted the analysis, and it's like, okay, let's just get there. Like, let's actually watch some basketball, and then we'll be able to judge and, have new takes and things. But yeah, it's been several days now, and I think we've all kind of hit every single note. I mean, if you look at the SF Chronicle coverage, shout out to my colleagues. I think we've literally exhausted every freaking note you could possibly have. Whether it's Joe Lacob's ties to the Celtics, or it's, everything the Warriors went through to get to this point, or Jordan Poole's emergence, or like everything has been touched upon. So it's like, let's just do this. But no, I agree with you. I mean, not only have the Celtics not seen an offense like the Warriors, they have only seen in these playoffs offenses that are the opposite of the Warriors. What makes the Warriors so difficult to defend is they do things that no other team in the league does. They are so unpredictable. Their movements take, for teams that haven't faced them a lot, it takes them a couple of games, especially in a high stakes situation like the playoffs. It takes them a couple of games to figure out what they're doing, because it's not the type of offense where you can just watch film and know what to do. You need to actually feel it. You need to be on the floor dealing with it. And I think that's a huge advantage. That's a huge reason why the Warriors have got through the first three rounds relatively easily, because it wasn't until like games 3 or 4 that their opponent understood what the Warriors were doing.
Right.
And I think that the Celtics are going to have the same problem, and it doesn't help that the Celtics have a combined 0 games of finals experience.
Yep.
The Warriors have 120 something, 124 or something like that. And that matters. It's a cliche. Championship DNA is a cliche, but it is true. Cliches are rooted in truth. And,
yes.
When push comes to shove, if the Celtics are down 15 going into a fourth quarter, I don't believe there's any way where the Celtics come back and beat the Warriors. If the Warriors are down 15 going into the fourth quarter, the Warriors still have a chance.
You're absolutely right. Yeah,
because of the experience in that core, trio. I want to call it a quartet because I want to throw Kevon Looney in there because he's been so important in these playoffs. They have so much high stakes experience that when they get in these situations and they face adversity, they don't freak out. And there's been some incredible stats that have come out of these playoffs. One of the ones that I think is incredible is that they're 4-3 in games that they were trailing going into the fourth quarter. They have an above 50% winning percentage in games they're trailing going to the fourth quarter. That's crazy. That doesn't happen, crazy, especially in the playoffs. But it speaks to how comfortable they are with each other, their synergy. And, I think the Celtics are going to be a good team for a long time, but I don't think this is their year. I think that, maybe next year, maybe in a couple years, not this year.
Maybe.
And like I said earlier, I think that we're going to see relatively quickly in these finals that a lot of people weren't necessarily giving the Warriors enough credit.
Still aren't. It's incredible.
Still aren't. And the thing is, like, in my opinion, the Celtics need everything to go right to win these finals. The Warriors can have a lot of things not go right and still win these finals.
You're absolutely right, man. I mean, like, just to put it in perspective, like that game 7 when the Celtics were up with like 13, with about 5 to go over the Heat, and the Heat almost won it. They were Jimmy Butler 3 away from winning that game. The Warriors would have been leading by 10 at that point if the roles were reversed.
Like one question I got in my mailbag today was, do the Warriors need Steph to go off for 40 plus? Because he hasn't had that game yet.
True.
And he partly hasn't had that game because he hasn't really needed to. If you look at his numbers, he's been pretty content to kind of facilitate and get up shots when they're open in the first 3 quarters. And then when the fourth quarter comes, he sees that bullseye and he gets a little bit more aggressive. I think he's averaging like a little over 5 points per game each of the first 3 quarters in these playoffs. And then he's averaging over 8 in the fourth. He could continue to do that and the Warriors could win these finals. He doesn't need to suddenly change how he plays. If guys like Jordan and Andrew Wiggins and Clay are going, he can be the facilitator and maybe finish the night with 15 points and the Warriors could still win.
Yeah.
Whereas the Celtics need Jason Tatum averaging well over 30 points per game to have a chance.
Great call. And I want to finish with this because it is interesting to me that I think it's safe to say that Marcus Smart has been the best defender on Stephen Curry in his career. How do you see that? I mean, it's hard to judge these regular season matchups just because there isn't enough time for coaches to truly game plan and prepare. So you've never really seen a lot of time for the Warriors to strategize in regard to Marcus Smart guarding Stephen Curry. I anticipate they're going to try to get him off Steph at all costs. What do you see happening there? Do you think Marcus Smart will be as effective as he has been, or do you think Curry will overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point. And that's definitely a huge thing the Celtics have going for them. And I wrote about the Marcus Smart, Draymond Green dynamic yesterday because these are probably the two best defenders in the NBA. And I think these finals could go a long way in determining, who unequivocally is the best defender in the NBA.
Yeah.
Yes, Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year, but he may not have if Draymond had been more healthy. If Draymond had played more than 43 games or whatever it was this season. And I have a stat in my story yesterday that I'm going to read real quick.
Please.
In the 6 games, Marcus Smart has guarded Curry in the past 5 seasons. Smart has held Curry to 30 points on 37% shooting, 30% from 3-point range, 3 assists, and 7 turnovers. Before Smart injured Steph in that game in March, I think Steph had 3 points and 4 turnovers in like 14.
Correct.
Smart is the best defender in the NBA, in my opinion, by a wide margin on Steph's. He knows exactly how to defend Steph, and part of why Marcus Smart is such an elite defender is because he really understands off-ball movement and like where guys are going to be and how to stick with someone when they're doing a bunch of different things with screens and things like of that nature. And so that's a huge thing the Celtics have going for them. But Marcus is not fully healthy right now. He admitted that he was only about 60% healthy in the Eastern Conference Finals. And you could tell.
Yeah, you absolutely
he was not himself. He struggled at times mightily against Jimmy Butler. And so that's a huge thing. If he was fully healthy, I would feel differently, but he's not. I mean, I'm sure the several days of rest have helped, but and the thing is, like I just said, even if he is really good on Steph, the Warriors can still win.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, even if Steph has an awful finals, like the Warriors can still win.
You're absolutely right.
There'll be a lot of disappointed people because there are a lot of people who are desperate to see Steph win Finals MVP.
My prediction is Steph will still get Finals MVP. You're right, though.
Over his MVP, even if I hate to say he doesn't deserve it, but like Steph will get Finals MVP, even if you could make an argument that someone else is maybe more deserving, just because everyone wants it so bad for him.
Exactly.
Mentality factor matters, I feel like, and honestly, as a voter, I voted on this stuff for a while, and as a voter, like you feel that pressure because at one point your vote is going to be released to the public, and if you're the only guy that didn't vote for Steph, like you will be destroyed. Like for years to come, you will be destroyed. So I was joking with CJ Holmes during the Western Conference Finals. I was like, I dare you to vote for Kevon Looney, even though I totally believe that Steph deserved to be Western Conference Finals. I was just joking with him, like, I dare you to vote for Kevon Looney or someone else just to be the only one that didn't vote for Steph. And he was like, bro, I'm not trying to get killed on social media. So we feel that. It's a real thing.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, and again, it's just over his 8-year career. Marcus Smart has held Stephen Curry to 29% shooting overall, so that is going to be an interesting storyline. But again, I think again with the amount of time they've had to plan for this, and given again you're taking into account like the 2021 season when Steph had no Klay Thompson or really anyone next to him. I'm confident that Steph's going to get his numbers. This is interestingly enough the first time an NBA Finals game will ever be played in the city of San Francisco. The Cal Palace is located in Daly City, where I believe previous NBA Finals games have been played. So that's interesting. Chase Center please bring the noise. You have no idea how important that is. I've been hearing it so far. Continue on. Otherwise, this should be a fun series. And Connor, your work is tremendous. I did read your preview; it was exemplary. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at @CON_CHRON, Con_Cron, to follow all of his content and more with the San Francisco Chronicle. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow, and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. And a friendly reminder, we're doing a mailbag segment of our own simply by leaving a 5-star review for our Apple Podcast page. We're trying to boost that number a little bit. Those comments are nasty. There's like no way to flag them. There's so much like mistruth and blatant defamatory lies on that thing that I just have no way of taking down. So I do want to address one thing I read on there. I have never once said the Warriors should have taken Davion Mitchell over Jonathan Kuminga. I picked Davion Mitchell in a mock draft because no one expected Jonathan Kuminga to fall to the Warriors. Of course, I would have picked Jonathan Kuminga. That's just one of a
lot
myriad
of
of
people
things
wouldn't
I saw.
have, man. I heard from a lot of people at the time who were questioning that pick. I was 100% on the Jonathan Kuminga train. And look, Davion Mitchell's been fine, but the upside just isn't there.
Exactly.
And Jonathan Kuminga, man, perennial all-star. That's another reason why Warriors fans should be feeling really good about everything happening right now, because it's like not only are they in the finals and, in my opinion, likely going to win the finals, but the future is bright, man. Like, you got Jonathan Kuminga at 19 years old, Moses Moody at 19 years old,
just turned 20. Yeah,
Jordan Poole, who's 22. James
Wiseman, 21,
very well could end up being a really good player in this league, and hasn't even played. Like,
it's incredible.
You know? And then
absolutely
keep in mind, Andrew Wiggins is only like what, 26?
26, 27. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's incredible. No, you're right, man. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And even Gary Payton II, I know I think he's 29 now, but he's got such limited mileage on the tires. I could see him playing at a top level for years to come. No, you're absolutely right, man. Do you think Kuminga plays in this series? I think Moody has shown that he belongs. Kuminga's been kind of iffy in this postseason. Like, do you think he's going to play meaningful minutes?
I don't expect him to, just because I think they're going to have GP2 and Porter and Andre, and they're more likely to give those guys minutes than Jonathan. So I think this is going to be a watch and learn type thing from the courtside seat for Jonathan. But he's had a couple moments in the playoffs. I think he should feel overall pretty good about just the fact that he was able to get on the floor in meaningful minutes in these playoffs. And it'll be really fascinating to see his development this summer. I don't know if they'll have him at Summer League, but Summer League's gonna be fun this year. James Wiseman will be his first Summer League, actually. There's a lot to look forward to. The draft is literally days after these finals end, and then you have free agency and Summer League. There's a lot going on.
It's incredible what Lacob, Myers, Riley, what they've created here is just absolutely incredible. Bravo. Connor, have fun at the game tonight, brother. This is always fun for me, and I'm sure DubNation loves you. Every listener and viewer of this program loves you. Thank you for coming on. Have fun, dude. We'll talk soon.
Okay, guys.
Go Warriors. Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Here we go. Later.